There comes a moment when the life we thought we were building suddenly begins to collapse in our hands. The relationship ends. The door closes. The dream fades. And we stand there, bewildered, wondering if the story we believed in was just an illusion. But what if endings aren't punishments? What if they're sacred transitions, divine invitations to a deeper becoming? When everything feels like it's falling apart, maybe it's not the end at all. Maybe it's the part of the journey where we're being gently, though painfully, led somewhere sacred. We often believe that when something ends, it's because we've done something wrong or because life has turned its back on us. A relationship dissolves, a friendship drifts away, a dream slips through our fingers, and our first instinct is to assume failure. We start replaying every detail, wondering what we could have done differently, as if every ending demands an explanation. But what if not every ending is meant to be understood? What if some endings are not evidence of loss, but of life moving us towards something we cannot yet imagine? We live in a culture obsessed with continuity, with fixing, holding, preserving. We are taught to see endings as unnatural interruptions, as disruptions to the story we thought we were living. But life, in its wisdom, knows that there are chapters we cannot rewrite and characters who cannot stay. Sometimes the sacred task is not to hold on, but to recognize that letting go is also an act of faith. To realize that what feels like abandonment may simply be the moment when life whispers, "You're ready for something new." There's an illusion we all fall into, the illusion of finality. The idea that when something ends, everything ends with it. But nothing truly ends, it only changes form. Love doesn't disappear because the relationship does. Purpose doesn't vanish because the plan fell apart. What was meaningful remains meaningful. It just shifts its place in our story. We grieve because we believe the form was the fulfillment, when in truth, the essence remains alive, waiting to express itself differently. When you stand at the edge of what you thought would last forever, you meet a kind of silence that feels unbearable. It's the silence after goodbye, the stillness after effort, the pause after collapse. Yet within that silence is something sacred, a space that asks you to listen differently, to not rush to fill the emptiness with explanations, but to trust that emptiness is fertile ground. It's where new meaning begins to take root. The illusion of finality breaks when we realize that what left us didn't take our life with it. It simply made space for it to grow. Every ending carries within it an invisible thread that connects to what's next. You may not see it, you may not understand it, but it's there, subtle, patient, pulling you gently toward what's waiting. We often call it coincidence, timing, or luck. But maybe it's grace. Maybe it's divine choreography that allows one door to close so that another can open with more alignment, more truth, more love. So when you find yourself whispering, "It's over," pause for a moment before you believe it. Because it's not over, it's transforming. The sacred doesn't abandon us when things fall apart. It expands, reshapes, and redirects us toward what was always meant for us. The sacred rarely arrives dressed in clarity. It doesn't knock politely at the door, announcing that something better is on its way. No, it often enters through disruption. It comes through unanswered prayers, through unexpected endings, through the moments we never asked for but somehow needed. And because we cannot see where it's leading, we resist it. We call it chaos, heartbreak, betrayal. We forget that divine redirection doesn't always feel divine when you're in the middle of it. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like standing in the ruins of what once made sense. There's something profoundly unsettling about realizing that the path you were walking so confidently no longer exists. You had plans, you had certainty. You had a picture in your mind of how things were supposed to go. And suddenly, life rearranges everything without consulting you. It's in those moments that we reach for control. We try to rebuild what's collapsing, to reason with what's already gone. We bargain with reality, as if our willpower could undo what was meant to be redirected. But the sacred has a way of removing what distracts us, even when we cling to it with trembling hands. We often ask for peace and then struggle when God removes the people and situations that disturbed it. We pray for clarity and then wrestle when He dismantles the illusions that kept us comfortable. It's almost ironic. We ask to be guided and then resist the very guidance that requires us to release what's not aligned. The discomfort of divine redirection is that it doesn't always look like guidance. It looks like loss. It asks us to trust the silence between what's leaving and what's coming. In those moments, we feel disoriented, stripped of the familiar. But perhaps that's the point. When life takes away what we were leaning on, it's not punishment. It's invitation. It's the sacred way of saying, you've outgrown this. The job that no longer fulfills you, the relationship that keeps breaking in the same place, the dream that stopped feeling alive. Sometimes they have to fall apart so that you can finally make space for what your spirit truly needs. The soul doesn't evolve in comfort. It evolves in the breaking, in the uncertainty, in the humility of surrendering to something beyond your control. The discomfort is not proof that you've been abandoned. It's proof that something greater is at work. When the sacred redirects, it never takes without the intention to give. It never removes without preparing space for what's next. The pain you feel is not a signal to give up. It's an indication that you are in motion, moving from one season to another, from one layer of yourself to a deeper one. And maybe the greatest act of faith is to stop asking why and start whispering, what now? To stop fighting what's leaving and start trusting that what's arriving will make sense in time. Because what feels like detour is often the most direct route to where your soul was always meant to go. There's a moment between endings and beginnings that most of us struggle to endure. It's that quiet, disorienting space where what was familiar has dissolved. But what's next hasn't yet revealed itself. You're no longer who you were, but you don't quite know who you're becoming. It's the in-between, the waiting room of transformation. And though it feels unbearable, it's where the deepest work of the soul takes place. We live in a world addicted to momentum, to certainty, to answers. We want to know what comes next, to map out the next chapter before the last one has even ended. But the sacred doesn't rush. It speaks in pauses. It lives in the subtle moments where everything seems still, but underneath that stillness, something essential is shifting. The space between no longer and not yet is where we learn to listen differently. Not for noise, not for direction, but for presence. When we find ourselves in that space, our instinct is to fill it. We distract ourselves, we make plans, we reach for whatever promises to numb the discomfort of not knowing. But the truth is, transformation rarely happens when we're busy trying to escape it. It happens when we allow ourselves to stay, to sit in the uncertainty without demanding clarity, to trust that even in silence, we are being guided. The sacred is not absent just because it's quiet. Sometimes silence is the only way it can speak. In this waiting, the mind wrestles. It tells stories about what's gone. It fears what's ahead. It wonders if anything meaningful still awaits. But in the stillness, the heart begins to whisper its own truth. A softer, wiser voice that says, "Be here. This is not the end. This is the becoming." The pause between what was and what's next is not punishment. It's preparation. It's the refining fire that burns away illusions and attachments so that what remains is authentic, grounded, and ready for what's coming. It's in these uncertain spaces that we rediscover who we are when there's nothing left to prove. When identity is no longer tied to roles, to relationships, or to what we do. It's where the old layers peel away and something tender, something true begins to emerge. The waiting teaches us patience, but also trust in timing, in process, in the unseen rhythm that life follows even when we can't feel it. And though it's tempting to rush through this space, to demand that the new appear instantly, the sacred asks for our surrender instead of our speed. Because growth that's rushed rarely lasts, and peace that's forced rarely stays. The pause between what was and what's becoming may feel like emptiness, but it's actually sacred construction, quiet, intentional, and full of promise. So if you find yourself in that space right now, unsure, suspended between chapters, take a breath. You're not stuck, you're being shaped. The silence you feel is not the absence of movement. It's the sound of something new being born within you. Control is one of the hardest illusions to release. We cling to it as if our tight grip could protect us from pain, uncertainty, or loss. We plan, we predict, we prepare, not because we are ungrateful, but because we are afraid. Afraid that if we loosen our hold, everything will fall apart. But what if control was never meant to be our source of safety? What if true safety lies not in control, but in trust? The moment we stop forcing life to fit our expectations, we begin to see that surrender isn't the opposite of strength. It's the quiet expression of it. There's a part of us that believes surrender means defeat, that letting go means giving up. But surrender isn't resignation, it's alignment. It's the willingness to let life unfold without insisting it follow our script. It's the moment we stop resisting the current and allow it to carry us, even if we don't know where it leads. It doesn't mean we stop caring or stop trying. It means we stop fighting what life is clearly trying to teach us. We stop clinging to what's breaking and start trusting that if it's leaving, it's no longer meant to hold us. Surrender is the mirror that shows us our deepest fears. The fear of uncertainty, of loss, of being left without direction. Yet it is through surrender that we learn we were never meant to navigate this journey alone. There's a sacred rhythm guiding us, one that doesn't always move in straight lines or predictable patterns. Sometimes the things we wanted most are removed, not because we failed, but because we've outgrown them. Sometimes what we call disappointment is simply divine redirection wrapped in disguise. To surrender is to choose peace over control. It's to say, even when I don't understand, I trust that something meaningful is unfolding. It's to find stillness in the storm and faith in the unknown. The act of letting go is rarely gentle. It asks us to release our attachments to how things should be, who we thought we needed, and what we thought life would look like. It asks us to make peace with uncertainty, to stop demanding explanations and start embracing mystery. Because only in the absence of certainty do we learn the depth of our faith. When we finally surrender, a strange calm arrives. We realize that the world keeps turning, even when we stop forcing it to spin our way. We notice small signs of grace, the unexpected phone call, the new opportunity, the quiet sense that maybe, just maybe, we're still being guided, and we begin to trust that life doesn't need our constant management to move in the right direction. To surrender is not to lose power, but to remember where true power comes from. It's not in the grasping or the forcing. It's in the open hand that says, I trust what's meant for me will stay, because what's sacred can only be received by those willing to let go. Pain has a way of becoming our most honest teacher. We try to avoid it, outrun it, silence it, but when it finds us, and it always does, it demands our attention. There is something sacred about the moments when life breaks us open. They strip away everything that is superficial, everything we use to distract ourselves from what's real. Pain doesn't come to destroy us, it comes to reveal us. It holds a mirror to the places within us that still need healing, still crave understanding, still long to be met with compassion. We often look at our wounds as evidence of failure, as if being hurt means we were weak or unwise. But what if our wounds are proof that we were brave enough to feel deeply, to love fully, to try despite the risk of loss. The people and experiences that hurt us often leave behind lessons wrapped in ache. Those lessons reshape us in ways comfort never could. We don't grow in ease. We grow in the friction between what we hoped for and what life delivered instead. Healing doesn't mean forgetting what happened or pretending it didn't matter. It means changing the meaning we give to the pain. It means looking at the scar and seeing not just the wound, but the recovery. It's realizing that what once broke us also built something stronger within us: resilience, empathy, clarity. Pain deepens us. It makes us more human. It stretches the borders of our compassion, allowing us to meet others with gentleness, because we know what it feels like to shatter and slowly gather the pieces again. There's a quiet dignity in choosing to heal, because healing isn't linear. Some days we move forward, other days we return to the same questions. But even in that back and forth, there's progress. Every time we face our pain with softness instead of resistance, we reclaim a part of ourselves. Healing asks us to stop running and start listening to the tremor in our chest, to the grief we buried beneath strength, to the memories we've been too afraid to revisit. Because inside those wounds is wisdom waiting to be uncovered. And maybe that's the paradox, that the very things we wish had never happened often become the soil for our awakening. The heartbreak that shattered our certainty taught us how to love with depth. The loss that felt unbearable showed us how precious presence truly is. The disappointment that made us question everything brought us closer to what's real. Pain doesn't just visit us, it transforms us if we let it. We can spend our lives resenting the wound, or we can honor it for what it taught us. Because the truth is, what once felt like breaking was actually becoming. And the scar you carry isn't a mark of what hurt you. It's a testament to the strength that healed you. One day, when the noise quiets and the ache begins to soften, you'll look back and realize that the detour was never a mistake. That everything you thought was falling apart was, in fact, falling into place. The people who left, the opportunities that slipped away, the moments that broke your heart, all of it was leading you here, to a version of yourself that could finally stand in peace rather than chase it. We spend so much of our lives trying to make sense of the chaos while we're still inside it, but meaning rarely comes in real time. It arrives slowly, like light filtering through the cracks of a long night. At first, you might not even notice it. The quiet signs of arrival. You wake up one morning and realize you're not replaying the past as much. The questions that once consumed you lose their sharpness. You find yourself breathing differently, not in fear, but in acceptance. You laugh again, not because everything is perfect, but because something inside you feels settled, like the storm has passed, and what remains is something unshakable. That is the quiet arrival of purpose. It doesn't announce itself with grandeur or fireworks. It comes softly, often disguised as calm. What we call arrival is rarely about external success or having all the answers. It's about inner alignment. That subtle knowing that you are where you're meant to be, even if you can't explain how you got there. It's understanding that every disappointment had direction, that every no was protecting you from a lesser yes. Life was never against you, it was refining you. It was teaching you how to live from truth, not fear. Sometimes the most sacred moments don't look miraculous from the outside. They look ordinary. A cup of coffee in silence, a walk in the sunlight, a conversation that finally brings closure. It's in those small moments that we realize how far we've come. Not because everything changed around us, but because something changed within us. The things that used to trigger panic now invite reflection. The wounds that used to ache have turned into wisdom. The longing that once felt unbearable has turned into gratitude. And perhaps that's what purpose truly is. Not a destination we arrive at, but a way of being that emerges after we've walked through enough endings to trust beginnings again. The peace we prayed for often comes disguised as stillness, and the clarity we sought arrives when we stop chasing it. The journey that once felt unbearable reveals itself as sacred ground. Every loss, every delay, every redirection perfectly placed to lead us home to ourselves. So when you look back, you'll see that nothing was wasted. The detour was the path, the waiting was the preparation, the breaking was the becoming. And this moment, this quiet, steady peace, was what the sacred had been leading you toward all along.